What can you tell us about your experience with sensory things, about the main experience that would introduce the people to something bigger that attract them to buy something in food and beverage?
Well, I think what's really important to understand is that our sense of taste does not really exist.
Okay.
What happens is a memory encoding. That means if you have amazing experiences as a child or experiencing something as you grow up, it's basically earmarked with a taste. And that means taste and memory goes hand in hand. And I think as long as you have that in mind, then you see the entire world of flavors differently. Now, of course, there's certain taste profiles we have, whether that's sweet, as the case is here in Mexico, more bitter in Germany. All these different flavor codes, of course, have something to say. But we know today that at least 50% of a taste preference is due to memories. And that means that when we work with this field now, we first of all ask ourselves, what are the memories a brand owns? Because you don't want to destroy a memory associated with a brand because you change the formulation a little bit and then suddenly that memory activation is not happening. Second, what are the memories you want to associate with in the future? And the third thing is how to make sure you preserve that so that you're not both destroying the brand, but also when you expand it into new categories, that memory encoding is still consistent narrative throughout every touch point. So this is what we're looking into a lot.
Since you coined this neuromarketing concept, how has it, or how have you seen it evolve in the food and beverage industry? Which changes have many brands made within this concept?
I think there's two different categories of industry players. You have the conventional ones which run their own formulation as they've always done, and the formula works for some reason, but they don't really know why it works. It just works. And then they have the other more sophisticated players which have tried to find out why it works, and because of that, it's almost like they go behind the scene. It's like if you have an amazing house and then you look at the architectural drawings and how the power grid is and how the water pipes are doing. And once you know that, you also know what does it take now to build an extension of the house or to preserve it so it's not being destroyed. And that category is the most important category we are working with now, because these people also know what does it take to evolve into whole new different flavor codings. So there's two things I'm interested in. One is, how do I communicate a brand's identity not through one sense, which is the sense of sight, and not two, which is the sense of sight and sound, but through the five senses? And how do I own that? That means that if I expose you for a sound, you immediately think about the brand. For example, if I take do-do-do-do, you think about McDonald's, it's a sound. But you can also go further and develop branded sounds which can make you crave, so you actually become more hungry. Or I can show you visualization which will make you crave, or I can work with sound. So all these things is what we're looking into a lot. Now many brands forget about that. They think, oh, let's run an ad, let's run a social media post, let's run a TV commercial. No, you can go much further if you want to do that. The second thing we're looking into is the testing and exploration of how far can you go in the future. And that's where we are exploring the idea of virtual reality and artificial intelligence, where we're saying, how can I create artificial environments which are so real that it almost feels like it's real, and then test a new flavor. Because the problem is, if I drink a beer, the taste may be good, but how much is it due to I was together with good friends, it was a very exotic location, I was in a good mood, versus actually the taste of the beer? We are breaking this down using virtual reality. And once you do that, you can actually separate it and find out what are the taste ingredients, the formulation you can work with to activate moments and memories. And once you do that, you suddenly are working in a whole new theme park of opportunities, which is crazy because it helps you to understand how emotions and brands and memories come together, right?
Do you think there's only one way to achieve that make a consumer to have a great experience?
No, I think there's multiple ways you can create an experience. I mean, an experience from what we've learned, it can be one that you're engaged with the food, that if you're cooking something, right, you like it more than if you haven't cooked it. Not just because of transparency of what's inside, but also because it was an experience, right? If you catch your own fish, it tastes much better than if you buy it from a store. That means the emotional engagement is important. But also if you create celebrations and what we call rituals and traditions around food, it has a profound impact. If it's always a dish served on a Sunday night with my grandmother, it has a flavor where you can't compete against that, right? But also if I blow out the candles on my birthday cake and I'm 6 years old, we know today from our studies, it makes the cake taste better, right? So rituals are very important. That's the second bucket. A third bucket is, of course, you understanding the ingredients and what signals they tell, because every ingredient tells a story. So this is the whole, what we call smashability. Smashability is where you can take an ingredient out and immediately recognize it subconsciously. So I know that gummy bear is from Haribo. I know that Big Mac is from McDonald's because of the dressing has what we call a taste bullet. That taste bullet is so unique that I can take that dressing and I can use it in India where you're not allowed to serve cow's meat, and can put it on pig's meat. And once I do that, then it still tastes like that. It still feels like it's a McDonald's, even though it's nothing to do with it. So you can really break down the whole thing. And in my opinion, there probably are around 20 different main pillars developing a flavor DNA. I think in the industry right now, they're concentrated about one or two, but in reality, you have 18 other pillars which can make a brand become powerful, but also a flavor experience become memorable, right?
And all of this, you've said it's more than 20 variables to that developed flavor. How do you measure them? I think that's...
Well, the measurement is very, very important, because the measurement is not a question about whether you like it or not. I mean, you can't explain why you like something. I mean, if I take your favorite, what's your favorite dish?
Well, I would say tacos, probably.
Tacos. Okay, so why do you like that?
I mean, the taste has to do a lot with it, but...
So what is it you like with the taste?
It's difficult to say.
You see, you can't say it. You can't, because the reason why you can't do it is because I'm going into your memory bank now and I'm asking the wrong questions. But if I ask a different question, which says, when was the first time you recall as a young child you had tacos?
I'm not sure, to be honest. But
did you have it as a child? Did you have it at parties, at dinners?
At parties or at night out with my parents, they would say like, let's not cook, let's go for tacos. So
if the tacos were non-existing in your life, what would you feel?
Like a part of my identity would probably not...
Identity will be gone. Now this is much more deep than, oh, it's sugar, it's sweeter or more bitter, because I can't use that for anything. But what I can use is the emotions you're telling me about. So the way you develop brands is to find out what is the emotion I want you to have, and then break it down and then measure against that, rather than, oh, it has to be 5 grams more sugar. That's fine, but it's the emotional side which is impossible to compete against, and the ones you can measure the most accurately, right?
Wow, that's really impressive.
And talking about emotions, with which one will be more related to a successful develop of products?
Well, there's no doubt about that the younger you are as a child, the more you embed emotions through taste. So if you had a certain experience when you're 6 years old, and it was a birthday party and everyone stood up and cheered at you and you got this cake and it had a certain flavor in it, you will love this cake forever because it's built into your priming. But also if you grow up, we know today using neuroscience that if you have what we call a somatic marker, S-O-M-A-T-I-C, a somatic marker, something so profound you'll never forget it, and you attach that with a certain experience, then you will never forget it either. That means if I, for example, take a person, and I did that the other day, a person in our team, he didn't like salmon. He absolutely hated salmon, but he had a really successful workshop in our team, and everyone loved it. And straight after, we went to a restaurant and I gave him salmon. And of course he didn't want to touch it. And I said, try that salmon, right? And he ate it and it was okay. Guess what? I was together with him last week and he ordered salmon by himself. And I said to him, why? And he said, I don't know, I just have a good feeling. And that is a somatic marker. So memory encoding is the key for food. And I think the challenge you have is when you look around at food tech, that many people think it's a rational discipline, but it's a highly, highly emotional discipline, because food is the only time we have a good excuse to be together without talking, but just enjoying a synergy and empathy together, right?
Right, you're it's absolutely true. And now that you say, like, how can we Now that we understand this neuroscience and what you've said about salmon, how can we use them probably to make more or impulse more nutritious food into the society?
Well, this is very interesting because most of the traditions we have which are unhealthy comes from our parents. And I remember we did an experiment, I think it was for Nestle in Poland, in Eastern Europe, where when we went out and asked people about a mayonnaise dressing coming from Nestle, we asked them, is it healthy? And almost everyone said it was healthy. And they actually would ranking as the most healthy thing. They thought it was healthy because your mom had given it to you. And she's kind of given it the blessing, the credibility. So what mom does is always the right thing, right? What you will see happening is that as a child, you basically do not question things when your parents are giving it to you. And that's the reason why if you want to change healthy living to become really healthy living, you need to start with your childhood memories. And again, another person in our team, I gave him some candy the other day and he said to me he's never had candy in his whole life. Now this guy is 27 years of age, never had it. I had a lot of candy because I come from a country which had the highest penetration of candy in the world, right? So I had a lot of candy. He didn't have any candy. And I said to him, so do you eat broccoli? He said, yes. And he really relaxed eating a broccoli and a cucumber. And for me, it was crazy, but I realized it's nothing to do with the stimulation. It was to do with him being primed differently as a child. So if you want to change the way we eat to more healthy living, start as a child.
Would you say it's like, okay, as a child would be like the first way to do so, but what about people on their, I don't know, their 40s, trying to change their lifestyle into a more healthy life living? Is there like neuroscience strategies to make them, or do you call their moms and tell them like?
There's multiple things you can do. I mean, there's two toolkits in the drawer which are very powerful. One of them is gamification. That means if you gamify things and I get a reward, if I change my behavior, I'm more inclined to eat that again, right? So you're gamifying it. And you can do that in all sorts of different ways. That's what you see when you take a look at Technogym, for example, where these exercise machines are gamifying me running or doing more exercise. And once people get over a threshold, they actually start to enjoy it, right? We had to get over a threshold, so gamification is one. Storytelling is really powerful. Storytelling is that if I'm told, we went to a restaurant, by the way, yesterday here in Mexico. It's a 2-star Michelin restaurant, and the guy talked about this dessert we got. A dessert, has basically went through, I don't know how many days, 100 and something days preparation time, and it's never really finished because it continued on and on and on. And just the sheer storytelling made that food become better, because I kind of convinced myself, oh, that's really unique. So storytelling is very important. And in my opinion, the third thing is really the ability to have other people talk about it. And that means the more people tell you that it tastes good, the more you will feel it tastes well. And we've seen that in one experiment we did called Brand Washed, which is also the title of one of my books, where we basically served people wine and then we had people gossip around the wine and say, oh, it's really good and we love it. And in that case, 91% of the people actually loved the wine. Whereas if there was no gossip, it was down in the 30%. So there's multiple factors you can use systematically to sway our opinion about certain food from going unhealthy to healthy.
So we're not talking just about experiences and our memories, we're talking about the convenience that we have around that gets us to think that something is better than something else.
Well, not convenience. Convenience means it's easy to get access to. And yes, of course, convenience have an instrumental factor. I mean, if you are sitting at a workplace and you want to have lunch and you only have a 30-minute break and you go down to the nearby Starbucks or to whatever fast food restaurant you have and you get a sandwich very quickly because that's the only thing they have, and they have potato chips and they have a cookie, well, then you take it because it's easy and you want energy, right? That is convenience, and that can be very dangerous. If it's not around, if you're not exposed for it, you eat it less. Now, one of the things I know is if I go into a hotel room and I'm on a diet, I empty everything out of the minibar because I know I'm just not strong-willed at 11 o'clock in the night where I'm jet-lagged and I want energy. So if I take it out, then convenience becomes really inconvenient. And that, of course, can help as well. So you can have convenience as one factor, but you can also have all the other emotional factors, and that combined, of course, is a very powerful formulation.
Great. So also moving on a little bit into your book, Small Data, how like there's this concept you've introduced of observing small data to identifying big trends.
Yeah.
So how can companies of any size, big industries, startups or medium industries, identify this small data, how like to measure it, and with it do different change using neuroscience in this matter?
Well, first of all, small data is really an advanced format of what we call ethnographics. It is to identify seemingly insignificant observations in our lives which have an impact for a big trend. And you will notice, for example, in the food industry that in many cases when a brand launches a whole new product, that consumers will start to consume it in a certain way, and that will typically be linked with a ritual, particularly in the beverage industry. So if you take some of the most powerful rituals around, they were actually not developed by the food manufacturer, they were developed by the consumer, which started to create a habit. So if I take Pepsi and Coke, many people for a while started to tack the can on top before opening it. I'm not sure if you've seen it. And some will even put the straw in between that little tag so it'll be in the can. Now what's really interesting is the reason why they originally would do it, because there would be sweat underneath the tin. And that means when you open it, you will get a lot of beverage on you. And it became a practical thing. But people are not aware of it anymore, and it actually doesn't work, but people still do it, right? So that becomes a very powerful ritual. That ritual, if you can brand it so it becomes associated with a brand rather than with everything in that category, you suddenly own an emotion. And that's what Kit Kat did from Nestle, where you have a Kit Kat, where you break it, and that sound is really distinct. The problem was that Nestle was not really aware of how powerful it was. So when they went through an operational challenge in Vevey in Nestle, in Switzerland, they changed the foil, the metal foil you have it around it. So when you're breaking it, it didn't have that sound. And that click sound, which makes it feel fresh, disappeared. And it impacted sales and went down because they were destroying a ritual. So brands have to be very aware of that you can own certain aspects, and that you find out through small data. By spending time with consumers in their homes, by going to bars with them, to restaurants with them, going out shopping with them, having parties with them, cooking with them. All these things will teach you insights about the food developing process, how it's consumed, how it's developed, how it's enjoyed.
And what happens with the smell in these kind of rituals? We know that we can also smell something and it seems amazing, but sometimes when we taste it, it's not the same experience.
Well, that's the case with coffee. So many people, when they're trying coffee for the first time, it smells really good. And when you taste it, it doesn't smell like how it smelled, right? The disconnect is really important to categorize it in two different categories. So one category is, I taste something, it doesn't taste like that, but it doesn't taste off either. This is what we call a incongruent effect. But incongruent effect is where there's a contrast. Contrast is, you tried it, you're drinking some wine or some water, you're sitting at home, and when you grab the glass, you take the wrong glass. So if you think you're getting wine, you get water. Or if you get water, you take your milk. And it's like, oh, it tastes horrible, right? Have you tried it? There's conflict in the brain. It's called an incongruent effect. It's where your brain is primed in one direction and it goes off. That is a very, very big problem in the food industry, that you create one effect on the pack design. When I open it, it has another signal. When I take it up, the heavy weight of it is different. When I put it into my mouth, it's a different feeling. When I taste it, it's a different one, and the aftertaste is different. All these 5 top points have to be in harmony. Quite often manufacturers are not aware of that. So it means that I take it, I have one set of expectations, it's not fulfilled, it smells different, it's not fulfilled, then it tastes good, and then it goes down. And the flavor curve really goes down, the emotions go down. Whereas if you build it up as a journey, it really becomes extremely powerful and something I stay loyal to. So it's a very big topic, and I think very few people are aware of how important it is.
Talking about all these strategies, what are the main the main challenges to implement neuroscience in different industries, or I mean in the food industry?
I don't think it's a challenge per se. I mean, neuroscience should only be used when you cannot uncover things which are difficult to explain. A little bit like your favorite dish. Why do you like it? I mean, when you can't explain things, that's where you typically will tap into neuroscience. The challenge is you really need to know what you're doing. You can't just have a big scanner using fMRI and then scan people's brain and look at a scan and say, well, I don't know what it means. You really need to develop some very strong hypotheses. So it's something you really need to know about the field. Second, it's not cheap. But once you've overcome those two hurdles, you will see that is extremely powerful because it helps you to understand the subconscious part of the brain. And remember, 85% of everything you and I do every day is subconscious. That means when you develop the food out there, it's only 15% they're looking at. 85% is really defining the success, but very few people are aware of it. So this is the opportunity, but of course you also need to know what you're doing, right?
And for the last question, what can you tell us about how you picture the future of food industry?
Well, the future for me in the food industry is that we will see virtual reality and augmented reality used a lot in testing to separate the rational from the emotional side, because we can't do it today when you do conventional testing. What you feel, I don't know. But if you suddenly start to use virtual reality where we simulate certain rituals, sense of belonging, music, ambience, friendship, all these things, I can suddenly take one of the senses one by one and take it out of the equation and then measure me. The second thing is you will have various formats of neuroscience, EEG, SST, and functional magnetic resonance imaging technology. And that will be the main three sources to measure what our brainwave activations are. We also will see that the interaction between the consumer and the brands will change, because brands will start to have a voice in the future. So when I talk to a brand, for example, my favorite coffee product, it will talk back to me using the right voice. So it's like you can talk to George Clooney from Nespresso, and you actually will be him answering about his experience with the coffee. That means the brands will come alive. You'll see that every product in the future will have a trend product. That means when you produce a product and it goes down the conveyor belt in the factory, we can pinpoint exactly that product, take it out of production, so we can also have food safety, which is much better. We can also allocate much more knowledge to how was it damaged through transportation. So there's a lot of things which will happen. The headline is, this industry is going to be much more impacted than what people think. They think, oh, you know, it's going to be a production issue. No, it's going to be the least. It's going to be everything else, tapping into how emotions are created, how we maintain it, and how we build it.
All of this, I think, it contraposes a little bit on what the food industry is used to when trying new products, right? When you have a sensorial panel that you got in these white rooms where no light is coming and everything is like really controlled to really evaluate the taste of everything. And what you're telling, like the concept of neuroscience, for me, it sounds like it's going to change that type of tasting.
I mean, it is stupid to think that you can test a beer in a white lab coat room where everything is white and you're drinking the beer out of a plastic glass. You can't do it, because the beer experience you have is when you're together with your friends. It's not when I'm sitting in a lab. None of you are in a lab normally. That means if I take that away, then I can't activate all the emotions with my friends, and I don't know what's generating what. So it's almost like you're acting 50% blindfolded. So you need to get out of the lab setting and create virtual settings where you then can say, okay, let me take the Corona lime ritual away for a second. How is that going to impact my taste preference for a Corona beer where there's a lime flavor in it, which, by the way, did not do very well? From a technical point of view, you will say, oh, it will do well because people like lime. No, people love to put the lime in the bottle to have a ritual, to create a sense of belonging, just like you love to drink a tequila in the Western world where you put salt here and a lime in the mouth and you go through that ritual. This is nothing to do with taste. It's everything to do with a sense of belonging, which is religion. But we're testing it in a lab where we can't do it, which is stupid, because it means that we are forgetting 50% of the value of that brand.
Wow, yeah, that's really powerful and really revolutionary as well. So I think those were the questions.
That's the one we had prepared for today, but we want to go deeper in this thing that you shared with us about the future technology that we will have ahead. There are many things to explore yet, and about this impact that the reality will have, what can you tell us about it?
Well, virtual reality, it will increasingly merge with physical reality, and we will have difficulties understanding what's different. Right now, you guys are spending around 75% of your waking hours in front of a screen. So we already have a foot into it. We saw recently that Meta was releasing some new glasses together with an Italian manufacturer, which basically means that now I can see augmented reality around me. And very soon you will see I walk around in a supermarket and it will give me guidance of what food products I should take down from the shelf because of my diet, or what I should stay away from because I have an allergy. So you will see that the food product will increasingly be guided by AI, VR, and augmented reality. So that whole decision-making process in partnership with the food manufacturers, so the FMCGs, CPGs of the world, the retailers, and me as a consumer creating loyalty will change. That means in the future, the FMCGs will probably bypass perhaps even the supermarket and go straight to the manufacturers. And we've seen some of the big CPGs working on that over the last 5 years. But that means loyalty will be created directly with the consumer, and you as a CPG manufacturer will start to learn about exactly what my taste profiles are, and in the future most likely design products which are exactly to that taste DNA based on my childhood memories. I think that's how far we will go, perhaps 5-10 years from now on. Because you have to remember, just like you can do customized, personalized medication, why can't you do customized, personalized food manufacturing, where it's exactly to my family and we become loyal to that. And we've seen that happening in Japan over the last 15 years, where you can go into a noodle restaurant and they will have more than 1,200 different noodles, which are to exactly that local neighborhood, which is produced by the same manufacturers, but they have 1,000 different variations of it because it fits to exactly that neighborhood I'm living in. So this is probably what we're going to see happening due to technology, right?